You got a friend in me.
You've got a friend in me.
You just remember what your old pal said, boy. You got a friend in me.
Well, we're down to the last and most recent film in Pixar's library. The first to come of many more Disney and Pixar sequels. Inside Out 2. I didn't really see a point in making a short review of this movie since I've been making the series for the past 5 months and I just thought I could talk about it in this series. So yeah, Inside Out 2. Back when the movie's trailers were coming out, I was more than excited to check it out in theaters, though not overly so. I didn't want to overhype this movie to a bunch of people, especially if it turned out disappointing, like Kung Fu Panda 4 or the Garfield movie. Not to mention the last few years for Pixar hadn't exactly been the best. I do like a lot of their recent films, but I wouldn't say I love them. And not to mention, this would be the first of what will come of many more Disney and Pixar sequels and spin-offs later down the line. So yeah, I was excited, but not too excited in case the film turned out to be a letdown. But then the movie started getting really good reviews, which immediately caught my attention. Is it really that good?
2 hours later.
Wow. They are so back! Yeah, I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. It is so freaking good. This movie not only manages to maintain the same elements that made Inside Out 1 special, but it's also able to expand on said elements and add a ton of new creative ideas to it and make it, in my opinion, a stronger movie than the first. So let's dive into this wonderful return to form for Pixar and see what it has to offer. This review is also going to contain some spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, skip to this part if you want to just hear my final thoughts. Or don't if you don't care about spoilers, I don't care. Okay, spoilers start in 3, 2, 1. Spoiler! Let's start by talking about the characters. And the biggest standout of this movie is Riley. I love that she gets a lot more focus this time around and gets fleshed out. Not saying she wasn't fleshed out in the first film, but she was kind of more in the background since most of the movie was about Joy and Sadness's journey. She wasn't quite as prominent as the others. This time she's put front and center and feels like one of the mains. The movie really takes its time to make her sympathetic and especially relatable. All the choices Riley made, be it either good or bad, were the parts I found to be the most investing. Especially with the choices the new emotions forced her to make. It's some pretty messed up stuff, and I wanted her to be okay in the end, in both social situations and at hockey. And this helped give the main conflict some stakes as things started to go haywire. I also loved all the new emotions. They were a lot of fun and nice additions to Headquarters. I liked envy, embarrassment, and ennui, but it's anxiety who really steals the show. I love how she's not portrayed as a traditional villain, just someone who means well overall but doesn't recognize how much harm she's causing to Riley. I thought it was pretty cool the way they take her character. As for the OG emotions, they're still great as well. Joy herself is as charming as ever, and I like how fear, anger, and disgust are now a part of the adventure with her to get back to Headquarters, and their banter and arguing were some of the funniest moments. Shout out to Tony Hale and Liza Lapira for doing a great job for voicing fear and disgust. It hardly felt noticeable that they were replacing Bill Hader and Mindy Kaling, and that's something I wanted to give them props for. In terms of the actual story, I thought it was pretty tight for the most part. It basically cuts back and forth in between the real world stuff with Riley and the stuff going on inside her mind. And I think the way they were able to balance these two plot points was strong, and I was able to remain engaged the whole way through. One thing I love in particular is how the movie explores this new concept about self-beliefs. I won't go too in-depth, but I will say it reminded me of a conversation me and my sister had with Dad, basically telling us how we should fill our minds with more positives to weigh out the negatives. I love how this factors into the story, the concept was handled well, and it helps make the film feel fresh and stand out from the first film. I will admit some of the plot structure feels a tad similar to the first film. Like, oh no, the emotions are taken out of Headquarters and have to get back before it's too late, again! Some of it felt a little bit familiar, but thankfully not by much, and I was hardly able to notice. They add a ton of new stuff to the world outside of Headquarters, like this memory vault that contains Riley's suppressed secrets, a stream of consciousness, a sarcasm, a literal brainstorm, an imagination system containing workers that look like animators working under their corporate overlords that seems like a sneaky evil Disney allegory, etc., etc. And it's all a ton of fun. Much like the first film, the tone is able to stay consistent with a perfect mixture of humor and emotion. The emotional moments especially are what Pixar has always been known for, and here it's no different. They were able to pack a good punch for me for the most part, especially when we get to the climax, which is intense to watch. There's one scene in particular that I don't want to spoil because I want you to see this moment for yourself, but basically it reminded me a lot of Puss's panic attack in Last Wish. That's how gut-wrenching it felt. Adding to the emotion is a lot of funny moments to balance things out. I liked hearing the return of John Ratzenberger in the sarcasm scene.
Wow, those guys are jerks.
I think the funniest bit for me was when the emotions are trapped in the vault and they meet all these characters that are apparently supposed to be Riley's other biggest secrets. One of whom that reminded me of this little nostalgic cartoon.
Everybody say, "Oh, Toodles!"
If you've seen the movie, you probably know which character I'm talking about. Honestly, there's very little that I disliked about this movie. Aside from it feeling a little bit similar to the first film, there isn't any other problem I have. It really feels like a strong second chapter, and everything about it feels like it was meant to be the next part of the story. At its core, it's saying new things about the struggles of new emotions as you start to grow up. The story feels a lot more complex, and the world of Riley's mind feels like it's expanding. As a teenager myself, this film was especially relatable to me as I have made many choices that I am not proud of in both my social and personal life. I've let my emotions get the better of me. I've even had my own self-belief of what defines myself as a person. And this movie was relatable to me solely because of how much I saw myself in Riley. It really is the complete package, and thus, I would consider this to be the best Pixar sequel we've gotten since Toy Story 3. Yeah, I'm just as shocked as you probably are. Yeah, I really don't know what else to say. This was a great time. Perfect amount of humor, perfect amount of emotion, perfect amount of relatability. I had a blast with it from beginning to end. It's a huge improvement over its predecessor, and it's easily up there as one of the best Pixar films ever made. And I highly recommend you check it out. Not on Disney Plus, in theaters. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. I'm giving this movie a 9 out of 10. It's the best animated film of 2024 so far. Prove me wrong, Moana 2, prove me wrong. So, that's my Pixar series. It's not completely over. I'm still going to come back to the series when the next Pixar movie comes out. And honestly, this was the most fun I have ever had making a series in quite some time. This was certainly a whole new thing for me and this channel. I didn't make this series to spread the word about what makes these movies a masterpiece or a failure. I just wanted to share my own opinions on them and show why Pixar has been my favorite animation studio for the longest time. Yeah, even the most diehard fan of the studio can admit that they haven't been as consistent as they were before. But their lows aren't the lowest things ever, and their highs really are stuff worth remembering. Pixar is a company that is still able to tell great stories, whether it be big and grandiose, or simpler and more down-to-earth. Their movies defined my childhood and continue to define my life as I get older. As of right now, we don't know what the future holds for the studio, and it doesn't seem all too bright. But I really hope they continue to innovate and try new things, and tell original stories no matter the outcome. So yeah, in spite of all the mediocrity, in spite of all the corporate demands shoved down their throats, in spite of all the weird decisions they make, in spite of all of that, I will forever and always love Pixar Animation Studios. Not much else to say. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.